Scratch have any input into like the final cut of this, or given approval or something like that? Or?
No, not really. He wasn't around for any of the editing. He saw the final cut and he loved it. We screened it for him, and he didn't say much. He was like, he watched about. Well, I think he watched the whole thing. The first time he watched about 45 minutes of it. He kind of just was like, he said, "This is going to be massive." That was his only quote, and then that was it. And then we sent it to him another time, and he watched it, and he really enjoyed it. And I think that he mostly said that it's good to see yourself before you know what you're really doing. And I think that was his way of sort of, you know, dealing with the difficult footage of him and difficult parts of his life. You know, this is really, some of that was before he really had his stuff together, you know. But he appreciated seeing that footage now that he's thinking with a clear mind and he's completely drug-free and vegetarian.
What drew you to the Lee Perry story, and it took 5 years? Could you tell us something about that cycle?
Well, it took a lot longer than 5 years. For me, I guess the journey was about 5 years, and for my co-director, co-producer, Ethan Higbee, it was about 10 years. And this was really his idea and his you know, his obsession for a long time. Ethan is, you know, he's like a reggae historian, and we met at NYU together. We were film students, and he, you know, when I first met him, he was first talking about doing this movie, and I knew who Lee was, and I was a big fan of Lee. I guess what really drew me to this story was two things. Number one being that reggae music, and when I was a kid, my dad used to play Bob Marley in the house, and I grew up listening to it, and it was a big part of my life, and it was a beautiful thing. And number two, as a filmmaker, as I, you know, went to school and started making movies, I'm really drawn to stories of interesting characters. So, you know, a unique point of view, a unique way of seeing the world. And Lee Perry has an extremely unique framework for how he sees things. You know, and it sometimes can be very frustrating and maddening, but it's genuinely fascinating to me. You know, the idea that he, like, for example, he says that he bootlegged the Wailers' music, but he was doing them a favor because he was introducing them to a whole new generation of Brits, you know, and he made them famous because he bootlegged them. And that's fascinating to me, that's how he sees it, you know. And so everything that he said up until, you know, up until I met Ethan, everything that I had heard from Lee, and it was just really fascinating to me. So when Ethan started talking about this idea of doing this documentary, I was immediately attracted to it. It was just one of those ideas where you think, like, well, that's a great idea, let's do it. And, you know, so we started to go into the process of trying to put this thing together, and everybody told us not to do it. You know, especially people involved in the reggae community. The first thing was, no, you don't want to do a movie on Lee Perry. That guy's crazy. So many people have tried to do this movie. You guys will never succeed. You'll never get it done, and he'll probably throw you out on your ass like the first time he meets you. But we had the very opposite experience, and which is why, and you know, when I give the sound bites to the press, I say I didn't choose to do this movie. Lee Perry chose us. Like, I really felt like when we went to Einsiedeln, Switzerland, like 60 miles outside of Zurich, and showed up on his doorstep, he welcomed us into his life, and he really chose us to do this movie. And I don't know why, maybe it was the right place, the right time, but after spending like 5 years with him and working on this movie, Ethan and I really feel like we look at him like almost like a grandfather. Like, you know, we have a very genuine and wonderful relationship with him, and I feel really blessed of having done this movie and getting to know him and his unique personality. Yes?
Can you talk about the decision to have no other voice except the narrator and Lee himself?
That was a decision that was made very early on. We did a lot of interviews. I think we interviewed probably between 16 and 20 people within the community, from artists to journalists and reggae historians, Roger Steffens, and we just decided not to include them early on as a creative decision. I was definitely inspired by Errol Morris and The Fog of War. It's one of the movies that really, I think, inspired this. And I think the idea behind this movie that, similar to The Fog of War, is that when you have such an interesting guy talking about such an interesting topic, just let him tell a story and just stay out of the way. And so to a certain extent, I mean, the first cut of this film was about 6 hours long. And it was just Lee. There was no interviews in even the first cut. So to get it down to 90 minutes, it was a chore. I mean, it took 2 years just solid editing just to get it down to 90 minutes. And, you know, by the time we gotten it down, we started to think about how we were going to incorporate the other interviews. And Ethan and I both made this decision that, no, we didn't want any of them in there. We just wanted it to be Lee. And so that was the decision we stuck with, and we have all these interviews on video, great interviews with Adrian Sherwood, and you know, a lot of these guys who were there at the time, and you know, we just decided not to include them. It was a big decision, but we're really pleased with it.
They can be DVD extras.
Yeah.
They just might be.
I'll come again. Adrian Sherwood. I mean, to me, you know, you talked about the madness in the 80s, but the point when he worked with Sherwood, when he said, you know, he slew the devil, you didn't get on the slaying of the devil.
Yeah, that was it. That was in a previous, an earlier cut, and again, it was just there's only so much that we could include, and so we ended up taking that section out, and also Mad Professor, who a lot of people notice is you know, conspicuously absent from the film as well. There was just too many. Lee had worked with so many people. By the time we got to the Beastie Boys, and then even now, his whole the last couple of years working with Andrew WK, like we weren't able to include so many of these great artists. So we there were decisions that had to be made for the story, and to keep it moving quickly, and to really make sure that we got in those key elements, but also to stick with the narrative of Scratch's life. Because this movie was both about his music as well as his life and his family and who he is as a person. Yes.
Was that a lot of the older footage from his own home videos, or was it from other people or something?
Yeah, a lot of what you were seeing in the old footage was from his home videos, from the Lee Perry home video archive. And it was pretty amazing watching that footage when we first got it. And a lot of it is on VHS, and nobody's ever seen it before. And as far as I know, we have the only copy in existence. So it was the stuff that you see, like the 16mm stuff that was transferred to video, like the stuff at the beginning with him spinning around and stuff. Like that's from his home video archive, and that, you know, there's about 3 hours of that stuff that is just absolutely fascinating. It was from the Black Ark, the time in which, like right after the Black Ark had been burned to the ground. But it's just a rare find, and we were really lucky to have gotten a hold of it. And Lee gave us everything in his personal video archive. He allowed us to have, as well as you know, the rights to all his music, you know, all the publishing and masters that he owned. Yes?
Is it going to be broadcast on television or cable, or is it planned to release it theatrically, or how can people see it?
Well, right now it's being released theatrically. we're self-distributing it, and we've booked about 30 cities this spring and summer, all across the country right now. Eventually we'll branch out globally, and because there's a lot of people, I mean, hitting us up on Facebook and all, you know, on the website from the UK and especially Canada. The DVD is coming out soon, and we're going to have it for sale on our website, theupsettermovie.com. The DVD is like a special collector's edition. We're only making 1,000 of them at first, and it's just got tons of bonus material, and it's, you know, really it's like a double like package thing, and so that should be out soon. And then eventually, yeah, it'll make its way to TV. But right now, it's just traveling around the country. So if you have friends in other cities, and it's gonna be everywhere. It's gonna be San Francisco. It's playing in Portland right now, actually tonight. I played in Long Beach last night, and the premiere was in LA at the Downtown Independent last weekend. But we're going all over. We're gonna be in Brooklyn in June. So if you want to come out and see it again, it'll be in Brooklyn. But yeah, just check out the website at theupsettermovie.com for any further information about the release.
Is Lee available if you want to do press, like we want to do magazine or stories about it? Is Lee available?
Absolutely. He would love to. It's a little tricky, like, sort of putting that together, but he does want to do press. He has done it in the past, actually. He did. We had a great feature in Stop Smiling magazine, and he actually got on the phone and talked to the writer, and he had some great quotes in there about the movie. So that was really great, and I love personally, I just love reading articles like that. So if anybody's interested in that, just meet me after the screening, and I can, you know, we can figure out a way to hook that up. And Benicio as well. Benicio is a big fan of the film. We're going to do a special screening with Benicio at the IFC Center sometime this summer. It just has to try and coincide with his schedule. He's in Cuba shooting, he's directing his first film, but he wants to do press. He loves the film. He gave us like a couple quotes for the press, and he wants to come to screenings as soon as he gets back stateside. So, you know, look forward to that as well. Yeah.
Did Lee ever talk about his first family in Jamaica, his first wife, his first children he had there?
Yeah, he did a little bit. But you know, I mean, we didn't really get too much into that. I mean, I'm trying to think of anything that I could say about him talking about that. I mean, mainly we heard from, we interviewed Marsha Perry in the UK, and we tried to interview Omar. You know, he didn't say much other than, you know, talking about just the Black Ark and you know, being a father and raising his kids at the same time as having all this craziness going on around him, you know, with the recording constantly 24/7 in his own house, and like he had his family there at the same time, and it must have been pretty wild for his kids to grow up around that. Yep.
What's his family like? Did you get to meet them?
Well, I met his new family, and I spent a lot of time there because we basically lived at his house in Switzerland. And he has two families. He has his Jamaican family, which I think is 4, 5 or 6 kids, and then in Switzerland he remarried, and he has 3 children in Switzerland. And so I spent a lot of time with his kids. Gabriel, who's like, I think he was like 8 or 9 when we recorded this, and now he's like 13 or 14, and yeah, his family's great. Morel is an amazing and very interesting person, and he's a real dad. I mean, when we were there, he would be sitting at the dinner table eating spaghetti and watching reality TV with his family while we were taking a break from shooting. And yeah, he's just, it's kind of crazy. He's 75 years old and he's got like a 14-year-old son, but it's great, you know. He's a dad in some ways, you know, and a grandpa, and probably a great grandpa, I'm sure, at this point. Okay, well, any other questions?
Well,
Yeah.
I was only going to say that there were those scenes where he's putting the fire and the ice, which tie in so well with the narrative. And did he enter into that? Did you say to him, wow, it would be really good fun, you know, if you would do this? And did he enter into the spirit?
No, we didn't plan that at all. In fact, when we were shooting, I think the second or third day, as we were wrapping up at night, he came up to us and he said, tomorrow I want you to go pick up some petrol. And we just had no idea what he was talking about. Like, what do you mean, pick up some petrol? And yeah, just go to the gas station and get me some petrol. So we did, and we came, and then he you know, he just built this bonfire on his yard, you know, and I mean, we were recording, and we were staying. I mean, I was this close to the fire. You could see the camera was shaking so much because I was like, my hair was getting singed, and he was just tossing gasoline on this fire. It was pretty crazy, but I mean, it's a beautiful image. And it wasn't until I got back to America and I was looking at the footage that I was like, this is really beautiful. This is quite a metaphor. And he says, and you hear him in the background, he says, fire and ice, you know. Because that's really, I think, the greatest metaphor for Lee is like these extremes, like fire and ice. Like, that's him. He's this man of like these extremes, and he's never in the middle anywhere. He's on one side. He either hates you or he loves you. You know, if he hates you, he's going to become the devil, and you're going to know it, and you're going to suffer. And if he loves you, he's going to become God, and he's going to take care of you, and he's going to, you know, it's this extreme. And there's still people that you know, he won't even be in the same room with Bunny Wailer. Like, they get booked on these shows, like these gigs in Jamaica. You know, they'll do these like, you know, like 30-year anniversary of such and such album, or just Reggae Sunsplash, and they're both booked. They won't be in the same room. So if they are on the same bill, like they'll have to show up at different times, because if they end up seeing each other, there's going to be some type of confrontation. And so he's really this extreme, you know, and the fire and the ice defines that. I think that's the best, one of the most beautiful images of the film, and to me that's Lee. Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming. I think this is the second show.